I hope that you're well, and I also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today, we'll be doing our grade 2 English lesson on action verbs. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once you've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of English language arts, grade 2, and then we're going to scroll down up until we get to the chapter of action verbs. All right, so our chapter is action verbs. Our subject is English language arts. Grade 2, and the lessons that we are going to be focusing on is to use action verbs and to identify action verbs. All right, so an action verb, right? It tells you what a noun does. So an action verb, it tells you what the noun does. And when it comes to action verbs, right, then, or let's say first, before we go to what an action verb also is, then firstly, nouns are people. So nouns are your people. Think of animals or even things, right? So which means that an action verb, it will tell us what either people, animals, or things are doing or what they do. For example, it says she ate an apple. So now we need to ask ourselves, what is she doing? Right? So we ask ourselves, what is she doing? And then we say she ate. So ate is our verb. Another one says we smile. And smile, it tells us what we are doing. So she ate an apple. Ate tells us what she did. And smile tells us what we did. So we smile. All right. So also we can say an action verb, it shows what the subject of the sentence is doing, which means that the noun, right? So it tells us or it shows us what the noun, what the person, what the animal, what the thing is doing within the sentence. And if we look at the few examples also, right, of a verb or the action verb that shows us what the subject of the sentence is doing or what the noun is doing or what the people or animal or thing is doing. And then we say Jackson works at the fire station. So Jackson works at the fire station. So now if we were to ask, what is Jackson doing? So what is Jackson doing? And then we say Jackson works at the fire station. So works is our action verb and it tells us what Jackson is doing. Susan poked Ian in the eye. Susan poked Ian in the eye. We need to say what Susan did. So what did Susan do? And we can say Susan poked Ian in the eye. So poked is our action verb. Michael smiled with relief. Michael smiled with relief. And if we were to choose the correct action verb, then smiled because it tells us what Michael did with relief. Michael smiled. And the last one says, we traveled to Italy last summer. We traveled to Italy last summer. So now the question is, what did we do last summer? Traveled is our action verb. It tells us what we did last summer. right. And if we look at a few more action verbs, remember action verbs, it is the action that the person, animal, or thing is doing. And here we have a few more action verbs. If you look at the action verbs, it's something that someone is doing. So the action verb that tells us what someone is doing. Look at the one boy. It says walk. Run is an action verb. Stand. So if you're just standing, that is also an action verb. It's something that you're doing. Cry is something that you're doing. Read is an action verb. Laugh is an action verb. Play is an action verb because it's telling us what you're doing. Ride is also an action verb. Think and jump because these are things that you are doing, right? It's things that you are doing, and that is an action verb. It basically tells us what the noun or the subject is doing. It tells us what the person or thing is doing, right? All right. Yes, we have action verbs like jump, give, swing, break, cut, flip. That is correct. Well done. Here we have more. Yes, we see we have jump and sing, even to study. So you just think that you're sitting there. Nope, you study is something that you're doing, it's an action. Eat, dance, cry, to kneel down or to stand up, to swim, think, read, to pull, even to push is an action verb. Sit down, stand up, wave, drink, eat, cook, bake. Those are action verbs. It's telling us what the person or thing or even animal is doing. All right. So if you thinking, okay, the question now is, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing now? Like, if I were to say what I am doing, right? So if I were to say what I am doing, then I can basically say that I teach English, or I can say I talk a lot, teach, talk, right? I sit on the bed, or I am sitting on the bed. Or let's just say I sit on the bed. right? These are a few things that I am doing. All right, so now let's go to we're going to aplusstudents.ca, and we're going to do the lessons of, we're going to use action verbs and we're going to identify action verbs within the sentences. All right, so we're using action verbs now. So we said an action verb, it tells you what a noun is doing, right? So it tells you what the noun is doing. And if we look at our examples, we made an example of she ate an apple. So ate is an action verb. We smile. Smile is an action verb. They sing. Sing is an action verb. We laugh. Laugh is an action verb. I read. Read is an action verb. The boys jump. And jump is our action verb, right? So laugh, read, jump, sing, smile, ate. Those are our action verbs within our sentence. And it basically tells us what a noun does. It tells us what the noun, which is people, animals, or things, are doing. So now let's look at our sentence. It says we need to complete the sentence with the correct action verb. The lady, mm, when she won the prize. So we can then say the lady laughed when she won the prize. Or we can say the lady jumped. Because remember, if you win a prize, you usually jump up and down, right? So the lady jumped when she won the prize. The lady shouted when she won the prize, right? We can even say the lady ran when she won the prize, because usually if somebody wins something and they win something big, they start to give a good jog. It's like they're running and jumping up and down. Ashley. Ashley, across the grass looking for her ring. Let's say, for example, your ring or something fell on the grass. What would you do in order to go and find or to look for the ring? Screamed is also correct. Yes, well done. So Ashley, if he's looking for his ring right across the grass, so we can either say Ashley crawled across the grass looking for the ring, or Ashley walked across the grass looking for her ring, right? So that is, or those are action verbs that already tell us what Ashley did while she was looking for her ring. All right, so now we're going to our test. And we are going to use action verbs. It says, Miss Maxwell. Miss Maxwell. Do we say Miss Maxwell time in the children's library? Or do we say Miss Maxwell works in the children's library? Miss Maxwell time, option one, in the children's library, or Miss Maxwell works in the children's library. We need to complete the sentence with the correct action verb by choosing the correct action verb. All right, yes. And if we were to choose the correct one, sorry, we can say Miss Maxwell works in the children's library. So, works is our correct action verb. It says Philip. Do we say Philip a basketball higher than anyone else on the team? Or do we say Philip jumps higher than anyone else on the team? Philip. Philip basketball higher than anyone else on the team, or Philip jumps higher than anyone else on the team. We need to choose the correct option. All right, and if we were to choose the correct option, we will say Philip jumps higher than anyone else on the team, right? So jumps is our correct option. All right, Nina. All right, we need to say what Nina is doing. So we need to say what Nina is doing. Do we say Nina plays games with her sister? Or do we say Nina played games with her sister? We need to say what Nina is doing. All right, and if we were to choose the correct option, then we would say Nina played games with her sister. And played is correct. The lady, right? The lady. Do we say the lady laughed when she won the prize? Or the lady first when she won the prize? The lady laughed when she won the prize? Or the lady first when she won the prize? Option one or option two? So do we say the lady laughed when she won the prize or the lady first when she won the prize? Something that the lady did. All right. And when it comes to this option, right? And then we can say the lady. We are now by the lady. The lady first. The lady laughed, sorry. The lady laughed when she won the prize. So laughed is correct. All right, the next one says, my sister, right? My sister. Do we say my sister bit the apple pie into 8 pieces? Or my sister cuts the apple pie into 8 pieces? We need to choose the correct action verb. So my sister bit the apple pie into 8 pieces, or my sister cuts the apple pie into 8 pieces. We need to choose the action verb that tells us what my sister is doing. And if we were to choose the correct one, then we will say my sister cuts the apple pie into 8 pieces. So cuts is the action verb that tells us what my sister is doing. All right, the next one says Eddie. Do we say Eddie fun the baseball to Cooper, or Eddie throws the baseball to Cooper? So Eddie fun the baseball to Cooper, or do we say Eddie throws the baseball to Cooper? And if we were to choose our correct option, we would say Eddie throws the baseball to Cooper, because throws is the action verb that tells us what Eddie did. All right, the next one says our neighbor. We need to say what our neighbor did. Our neighbor waves at me when I walk by his house. Do we say our neighbor kind at me when I walk by his house? What does our neighbor do? So our neighbor, we are about our neighbor. We are about the seventh one. We are about the seventh one. It says our neighbor. Do we say our neighbor waves at me when I walk by his house? Or our neighbor kind at me when I walk by his house? Which one is correct? And if we were to choose the correct action verb, then we will say our neighbor waves at me when I walk by his house. It's something that he does. He's waving, right? It says Emily caught the ball and Karen, do we say chased her or football her? Emily caught the ball and Karen, do we say chase her or football her? We need to choose the correct action verb that tells us what Karen did. Is it chased or is it football? What did Karen do? Chased or football? And if we were to choose the correct one, we can say Emily caught the ball and Karen chased her. And chased is our action verb that tells us what Karen did. All right, so well done. Now we're going to identify action verbs, right? We're going to identify action verbs. And remember, we said an action verb, it tells you what a noun does. So it tells you what a noun does, right? And the noun is people, animals, things. So which means that an action verb, it tells you what the people do, what an animals do, or what the things do, right? So we need to identify that. So if we're going to look at our sentences now, we are going to select the action verb within the sentence. The sentence is Dad pulls weed in the garden. Dad pulls weeds in the garden. If we look at that sentence, right? Dad pulls weeds in the garden. If we look at that sentence, we need to identify or select the action verb within that sentence. What is the verb that tells us what dad is doing? So we need to choose the action verb within that sentence that tells us what dad is doing. All right, and if we were to select the action verb, then we can say dad pulls weeds in the garden. So dad pulls weeds in the garden, right? So pulls, it tells us what dad is doing. So well done. Pulls is correct. The next one says Abe jumps on the bed. Abe jumps on the bed. We need to select the action verb within that sentence. Abe jumps on the bed. Abe jumps on the bed. And if we were to choose the action verb within that sentence that tells us what Abe is doing, then we can say jumps because it tells us what Abe is doing. Jumps on the bed. So jumps is our action verb. All right, and the last one says Tim laughs at my jokes. Tim laughs at my jokes. We need to choose the action verb within that sentence. Tim laughs at my jokes. Is it Tim? Is it laughs? Is it I at my or jokes? Tim laughs at my jokes. We need to identify what Tim is doing. All right. So if we were to choose the correct option, we will say laughs is our action verb within that sentence. Laughs, because it tells us what Tim is doing. He laughs at my jokes. All right, so now we're going to our test where we are going to identify the action verbs within the sentence. Guys, I think this thing is being delayed because I only see your answers coming in afterwards. All right, so let's look at the sentences by the test. It says Eva buttoned her coat. So Eva buttoned her coat. We need to select the correct action verb. Is it buttoned or is it coat? What did Eva do? She buttoned or she coat? Eva buttoned her coat. Do we say buttoned that tells us what she did or coat that tells us what she did? All right, and if we were to choose the correct option, we would say Eva buttoned her coat. Buttoned is our correct option. Nicole pets the cat. Nicole pets the cat. What does Nicole do, or what is Nicole doing? Do we say Nicole pets the cat, meaning pets is our verb, or cat is our verb? What is the verb within the sentence that tells us what Nicole is doing? All right, yes. And if we were to choose the correct one, we would say it is option one. Nicole pets the cat. Something that she's doing. Well done. Dad watered the garden. So, Dad watered the garden. We need to select the action verb that tells us what Dad is doing. As his dad watered the garden. So, what is our action verb? Is it watered or is it garden? Our action verb is it water or garden? So Dad watered the garden. Is watered our action verb or garden our action verb? All right, and if we were to choose the correct option, we can say watered is our option. All right, so watered is correct. Some kinds of ant bite. Some kinds of ant bite. What is the action verb within that sentence? Is it ants or bite? Ants or bite? Some kinds of ants bite. Ants or bite. We need to choose the action verb that tells us what kind of ant it is. Something that the ants did. And we can say that it is some kind of ants bite, and bite is our action verb. All right, so this is now the end of our lesson on action verbs. We said it with action verbs, it tells us what the noun does, right? Tells us what the noun does, it tells us what the person, animal, or thing is doing, right? And we made an example of a few nouns like jump and run and skate, laugh, sing, dance. Those are all nouns, right? Those are all action verbs, sorry, that tells us what the noun, which is either the person, animal, or thing, is doing. All right, so this is now the end of our lesson. Thank you very much, grade 2, for joining the class. And I really hope that you're going to have a good day further. Goodbye.